We continue with our conversation on evicted NSFAS students due to non-payment of accommodation fees. NSFAS Administrator Freeman Nomvalo was listening in to the conversation with the SAUS spokesperson, and he joins me now to respond to these developments. Freeman, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Almost 2 weeks ago, you and I had a conversation regarding these challenges on the outstanding payments, and you gave assurance that this would be taken care of almost immediately, and in some instances it already had. The conversation that we were having now with Asivat Landwa seems to suggest otherwise, and certainly from the reports that are coming through, that these outstanding payments remain. In fact, many of the students now are being evicted.
It is worrying that there are still students that are facing this. I did not hear all of the conversation you were having because of the connectivity issues on my side. But we have been clearing these payments, as I indicated in our last conversation. And at the moment, about 80 to 85% of the backlog has been cleared. There does seem to be some issues still in some areas. We picked up last week KST, and now we're picking up the one which we've been referring to. And some of it, because of the disparities between information that we have as NSFAS and the information that the institutions have, and some of it, it seems, as the spokesperson for SAUS was making reference to, as a result of the intermediaries that are still being used in this regard. And we are following up on all of these issues as they arise, and we are intending to make sure that they are resolved as quickly as possible.
Now, SAUS could not give us an exact number of the students that have either been evicted or whose accommodation fees have not been paid, but you indicate that there's a number around 15%. Now, translate this to an actual figure. How many students does this represent, this 15%?
No, so the 15% I'm referring to, I'm talking about the payments of the backlog. The question you are asking, SAUS, is a question about students that have been evicted. Not all cases where the payment is still outstanding, students have been evicted. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. I'm just making sure that we talk the same numbers. I don't know how many students have been evicted as well, and we will be following up immediately. And the team is already following up on these reports that we are getting.
The reason I asked the 15% is to get an indication, because obviously all those are potential students that could get evicted. Now one of the challenges that arises, Freeman, if you allow me, is that these students are writing their mid-year examinations and obviously going through the trauma of getting back from university, as Asiva suggested, and seeing their belongings out in the open. It's dead the middle of winter. The psychological challenges could potentially impair their performance, not just now, but even the year beyond. And what could happen is that you could withdraw if they fail. Is that not correct?
Absolutely. So when we look at these matters, we obviously have to look at all of the circumstances that the students are facing. The issues you are raising are issues that are risks that are associated with these non-payments, which is why we've prioritized this as a way of ensuring that students don't have to go through this trauma again. It's a pity that the extent of the problem that we're dealing with has been huge, and we are doing everything we can to move with speed in resolving them. And there will be a team working throughout the weekend to make sure that these latest reports are also attended to as well.
You don't think that they should have been working throughout many weekends before we got to this stage?
They have been already. The payments that we've made thus far have not just been made because we've only been working the normal hours. We've been working long hours, comparing the information, ensuring where the information is still missing, chasing that information, and that's been around the clock kind of work. But clearly, there are still issues that keep coming at us that we need to deal with, and all legitimate. And there are cases, and I don't want to make this an excuse, there are cases where some such evictions relate to students that are not necessarily funded by NSFAS, but because we have some students that are funded by us, we then find all of these cases related to us. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be dealing with the matters that face us. There are still cases that we have to resolve, and we are working on resolving them.
Now, one of the questions that I asked you in our last conversation, I think it's almost 2 weeks ago, was about the capacity of the individuals that you have working in NSFAS. Now, Sivet Landwa, and I'll paraphrase, but he says that NSFAS specializes in incompetence, right? And does not have credible and competent staff. Now, it's almost very, very difficult to disagree with them, if you will, when there have been countless conversations around we're putting to bed this challenge that NSFAS has with the distribution of funds, but the conversations are continuing because it is not being resolved.
Absolutely. So the interpretation by a person who's not working in NSFAS that we specialize in competence, given the history of where we're coming from, is not an unfair interpretation. The manner in which I responded to the question when you asked that question was saying, we facing the challenges that we're facing at TVET colleges, in particular on the payment of allowances, having very short time within which we have to devise systems and respond and make the payments without any glitches, we were able to do that. So there is people within NSFAS that are able to do the work that needs to be done and do it as quickly as possible. And I think they are beginning to demonstrate that. Obviously, we have not seen the last of the challenges that we are facing, and therefore we accept the criticism that SAUS is labeling against us. Our duty is to make sure that we do what we need to do in order to respond to these issues without making any excuses and denying what SAUS is saying. We should prove our worth by doing what needs to be done.
So let's talk about some of the work that's been carried out in engaging with the various institutions or individuals that are offering accommodation to these students in the last month. Obviously, to prepare them for what you and your team would have seen as an upcoming challenge.
Yeah, there has been a lot of these engagements. We have even set up a task team, which is meeting in the coming week to discuss these issues on the 26th and 27th of this month. And that task team is going to be seized with identifying all of these challenges where there's still gaps and looking at proposals on what needs to be done in order to resolve it. We've been talking to universities, we've been talking to students, and we've also been visiting some campuses where there's been issues that were brought to our attention, and we'll continue doing so. In the coming month of July, I will be visiting all the provinces, again, engaging on these issues of student accommodation, trying to wrap my head around what are the nuances in different provinces. We're also putting together a study that's going to look into how these accommodations are different from metro areas, from urban areas to rural areas to semi-rural areas, and what mechanism do we need to put in place to regulate all of those sectors in a fair and transparent manner. And that work will be done for the next 4 months. So we realize the importance of this issue of student accommodation, and we are putting our investments in ensuring that it's addressed as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the extent of the problem that we're dealing with has been huge. Hence, even though we have made some strides, there are still areas where we find what we're talking about today.
And finally, Freeman, if I'm a student and I'm evicted, or if I'm a landlord and I haven't been paid and I'm on the verge of evicting a student. Who do I reach out to at NSFAS? Who do I speak to? What are the numbers? Is there a platform that's available for that engagement?
Yes, we've created a dedicated email address so that those queries are sent to that email address. That email address is cleared on every minute to make sure that every query that comes through, we're able to follow up and address it as quickly as possible. And of course, there is the call center and so on, but that dedicated email address is specifically for the accommodation, and the email address is NSFAS accom.prov, and that is NSFAS A, all capital letter, CCOM, small letter, P, capital letter, ROV, at nsfas.org.za. That is the dedicated email address that we're using to make sure that we don't drop the ball on all of the queries that come through.
And this is manned 24 hours, I'd imagine.
Absolutely.
Freeman Nomvalo, administrator at NSFAS. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us.